the dark truth about feeling offended and how to fix it all right. Let's get straight into it. Why do we get offended? I mean, really, what's going on inside our heads when someone says something and suddenly we feel a surge of anger or hurt? Think about the last time you felt offended. Maybe it was something small, like a comment from a friend that rubbed you the wrong way, or maybe it was something bigger, something that made you question your values, your identity, or your place in the world. But here's the thing, being offended isn't just about what someone else says or does. It's about how we react to it. Let's dissect that for a second. We often think of offense as something external, as if someone else is responsible for our feelings. They said something out of line, they crossed a boundary, they insulted us, and now we're upset. But is it really that simple? What if I told you that the feeling of offense comes from within us, not from the outside? That's right. The problem isn't the words someone else uses, the problem is how we interpret those words, how we let them affect us. Here's a deep question for you. What does it say about us that we get offended so easily? Think about it. If someone's words have the power to completely derail your mood, your day, or even your sense of self, what does that reveal about the strength or fragility of your inner world? This is where things get uncomfortable, but it's also where the real growth begins. You see, feeling offended is a kind of emotional reaction that we often don't question. It happens quickly, instinctively. But someone pushes a button and we explode, maybe not outwardly, but internally. But the truth is, being offended is a choice. It's not an inevitable reaction to someone else's actions. It's a decision we make in how we interpret and respond to what's happening around us. We choose to be offended. And if offense is a choice, that means we can choose something different too. Now, I know what you're thinking, but some things are offensive. Some things are wrong, and I have a right to be upset about them, and you're absolutely right. There are things in the world that are unjust, unfair, and downright cruel. But here's the dark truth: staying offended doesn't fix those things. In fact, staying offended often distracts us from doing anything meaningful about the problems that actually matter. It leaves us stuck in a cycle of anger, frustration, and helplessness without any real progress. So, how do we fix it? How do we stop feeling offended by everything and start living with more clarity and purpose? It begins with understanding that offense is rooted in ego. When we are offended, it's usually because something has threatened our sense of self, our identity, or our beliefs. We feel attacked, so we defend ourselves, sometimes with anger, sometimes with withdrawal, but always with a sense of self-protection.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound spiritual lesson.
But here's the kicker: the stronger your ego, the easier it is to offend you. If your identity is fragile, if your sense of self is built on shaky ground, then anything that challenges it will feel like a threat. On the other hand, if you have a strong, secure sense of who you are, you won't be as easily rattled. You'll be able to hear criticism or disagreement without feeling personally attacked. You'll be able to engage with ideas that conflict with yours without losing your cool. In short, you'll be able to respond rather than react. Here's another deep question: are you reacting to life, or are you responding to it? There's a huge difference between the two. Reacting is automatic, emotional, and often unproductive. Responding, on the other hand, is thoughtful, intentional, and grounded in wisdom. When you react, you're letting the world control you. When you respond, you're in control of yourself. This brings us to the core of how to fix feeling offended. You have to shift from reacting to responding. You have to train yourself to pause when you feel that surge of offense rising up. Ask yourself, why am I feeling this way? Is this really about what the other person said? Or is it about something deeper within me? Often, you'll find that the offense is more about your own insecurities, your own unresolved issues, than it is about the other person's words or actions. And once you realize that, you have a choice. You can continue to react, to let your ego drive your emotions, or you can step back, take a breath, and respond from a place of inner strength. This isn't about suppressing your feelings or pretending that nothing bothers you. It's about taking ownership of your reactions and recognizing that, at the end of the day, your emotional state is within your control, not someone else's. So, the next time you feel offended, try this pause. Don't react immediately. Don't let your emotions take over. Instead, take a moment to reflect. Ask yourself, what's really going on here? Why do I feel threatened? Is this something I need to take personally, or can I let it go? In that pause, you'll find your power. You'll realize that you don't have to be a slave to your emotions. You can choose how you respond. The ego trap, why feeling offended is a sign of insecurity, all right. Let's dig deeper. Why does feeling offended hit us so hard? The uncomfortable truth is that offense is often a mirror, reflecting our own insecurities. When someone says something that offends us, it's usually because it touches a nerve, a part of ourselves that we're not fully confident in. It's like a bruise we didn't realize we had, and someone's words press right on it. That's when we explode, not because of what they said, but because it pokes at something unsettled within us. Think about the last time you felt truly offended. Maybe someone questioned your intelligence, your values, or your appearance. Now ask yourself, was the intensity of your reaction really about their comment, or was it about something deeper? If you're honest with yourself, you'll probably find that the offense struck at a part of you that feels vulnerable or insecure. And here's the thing, the more fragile your sense of self, the easier it is for others' words to shake you. This is where ego comes into play. The ego is a tricky thing. It's the part of us that wants to be seen, validated, and protected at all costs. It's constantly looking for affirmation from the outside world, and when it doesn't get it, it reacts defensively. The ego tells us that we need to defend ourselves when we're challenged, that we need to be right, that we need to win. But here's the dark truth: the stronger your ego, the more easily you'll be offended, because the ego is always seeking validation. And when it doesn't get it, it feels threatened. Let me ask you something profound. Why do you need to feel right all the time? Why does disagreement feel like a personal attack? If you're confident in who you are, if you're secure in your values and beliefs, then someone else's opinion shouldn't shake you. But the ego doesn't see it that way. It thrives on validation, and when it doesn't get it, it crumbles. That's why offense is often a sign of insecurity, because it reveals that we're relying on external approval to feel good about ourselves. But here's the good news: you don't have to live like this. You can break free from the ego trap. The key is to realize that your worth isn't tied to what other people think of you. It's not tied to whether people agree with you, validate you, or praise you. Your worth is intrinsic. It's something you carry within you, regardless of what happens outside of you. When you understand this, you'll find that other people's opinions lose their power to offend you. This doesn't mean you become indifferent or apathetic. It means you stop taking things personally. You start recognizing that when someone says something offensive, it's often more about them than it is about you. Their words are a reflection of their own experiences, beliefs, and biases. You don't have to let their words define you. Here's another deep question for you: what would happen if you let go of the need to be right? Seriously, think about it. What if, the next time someone says something you disagree with or find offensive, instead of reacting with anger or defensiveness, you just let it be? What if you responded with curiosity instead of judgment? What if you saw the situation as an opportunity to understand someone else's perspective, rather than a threat to your own? When you let go of the need to defend your ego, you open yourself up to a whole new way of interacting with the world. You stop seeing every disagreement, every criticism, every offensive comment as a personal attack. You start seeing them as part of the human experience, different people with different views, navigating the complexities of life in their own unique ways. And when you stop taking things personally, you free yourself from the constant cycle of feeling offended. So, what's the fix? It starts with self-awareness. The next time you feel offended, take a step back and ask yourself, am I reacting from a place of insecurity? Is my ego driving this reaction? If the answer is yes, then you have a choice. You don't have to be ruled by your ego. You can choose to respond from a place of strength, security, and confidence. You can choose to let go of the offense and move on with your life. Mastering the art of letting go, how to overcome the need to feel offended. All right, so how do we actually let go of feeling offended? I know it's easier said than done. We're often so conditioned to react that it feels almost automatic. Someone says something rude, and before we know it, we're caught up in that emotional wave. But here's the thing, letting go isn't about pretending we don't care. It's not about being passive or indifferent. It's about freeing ourselves from the emotional chains that keep us stuck in cycles of anger and frustration. Let's start with a simple truth. Feeling offended is a form of attachment. We're attached to an idea of how things should be, how people should treat us, or how the world should operate. When reality doesn't match those expectations, we get offended. But think about this for a second. Why are we so attached to our expectations? Why do we let external events, things completely outside of our control, dictate our inner peace? Here's a deep question. What do you gain from holding on to offense? Is it a sense of righteousness, a feeling of moral superiority, or maybe it's a way to justify your pain, to make someone else responsible for how you feel? But at the end of the day, holding on to offense does more harm than good. It keeps you trapped in a negative emotional state, while the person who offended you may not even be aware of what they've done, or worse, they don't care. So, the first step to letting go is realizing that holding on to offense only hurts you. It's like drinking poison and expecting the other person to suffer. The more you cling to that feeling, the more you're giving away your power. You're letting someone else control your emotional state. But when you let go, when you decide not to be offended, you take that power back. You reclaim control over your own mind and emotions. But how do you actually do that? How do you let go in practice? It starts with acceptance. Accept that people are going to say and do things that you don't like. Accept that the world is not always fair and people aren't always kind. This doesn't mean you condone bad behavior or injustice. It means you stop expecting the world to align perfectly with your values. By accepting this reality, you free yourself from the constant need to react. Next, practice detachment. Detachment doesn't mean you stop caring, it means you stop being emotionally invested in things that are beyond your control. When you detach, you allow people to be who they are without letting their actions define your emotional state. You understand that someone else's behavior is a reflection of them, not of you. This is key to letting go of offense. Their words belong to them, not to you. Here's another deep question for you. What would your life look like if you stopped letting other people's opinions control your emotions? Imagine the freedom you'd feel. Imagine how much lighter life would be if you didn't carry around the weight of every offense, every slight, every negative comment. That's the power of detachment. It's not about giving up, it's about gaining freedom. To go even deeper, practice empathy. When someone offends you, try to see the world from their perspective. Ask yourself, what kind of pain or confusion might they be experiencing that would drive them to say something hurtful? This doesn't excuse their behavior, but it helps you understand that most people act out of their own suffering or ignorance. By practicing empathy, you shift from anger to understanding, and understanding is far more powerful than offense. And finally, cultivate forgiveness not for their sake, but for yours. When you forgive, you're not saying that what they did was okay. You're saying that you refuse to let it control you anymore. Forgiveness is the ultimate act of letting go. It's the realization that holding on to anger or resentment is like dragging around a heavy chain. When you forgive, you drop the chain. You relieve yourself of the emotional burden and make space for peace. So, the next time you feel offended, remember this: you have a choice. You can choose to hold on to that offense, to let it fester and grow, or you can choose to let it go. You can choose to accept, detach, empathize, and forgive. Every time you make that choice, you're taking back control of your mind and your life. The freedom of self-mastery, how letting go transforms your life. So, what happens when you truly let go of feeling offended? What's on the other side of that emotional release? It's something most of us crave but rarely achieve: freedom. But not just any kind of freedom, it's the kind of freedom that comes from within. It's the freedom to live your life without being constantly pulled into emotional reactions by the words and actions of others. It's self-mastery. When you stop letting offense dictate your emotional state, you start to notice something incredible: you're no longer a slave to other people's opinions. Imagine going through your day, hearing criticisms or disagreements, and not feeling the need to defend yourself every time. Imagine what it feels like to remain calm, centered, and unshaken, even when the world around you is chaotic. That's the power of self-mastery. It's the ability to stay grounded in who you are, no matter what's happening around you. But this kind of mastery doesn't just happen overnight. It's something you cultivate little by little with every choice you make. Every time you choose to let go of an offense, you're strengthening that muscle of self-control. You're training your mind to respond rather than react. You're building a foundation of inner peace that can't be easily disrupted. And here's the key: the more you practice letting go, the more natural it becomes. Here's a deep question for you: what would your life look like if nobody had the power to offend you? Think about it. How much mental energy would you save? How many arguments would you avoid? How much more time would you have to focus on the things that truly matter? This is what self-mastery offers. It gives you the space to live your life on your terms, instead of constantly reacting to the terms set by others. The truth is, most of us don't realize how much of our emotional energy is spent on things that, in the grand scheme of life, don't matter. Offense keeps us small. It keeps us focused on petty conflicts and meaningless arguments. But when you let go, when you rise above the noise, you begin to see life from a higher perspective. You start to focus on your goals, your growth, and your inner peace. You stop getting dragged into distractions and start living with intention. Ultimately, letting go of offense is about gaining control over yourself. It's about mastering your mind, your emotions, and your reactions. And when you do that, you unlock a sense of freedom that few people ever experience. You become truly unshakable,